So hello and welcome to my channel. I've got a bit of a nice surprise for you today. I actually got my first guest storyteller, which is my father Ian, and he will be giving you a story based on 5 words that were selected randomly as ever and have been given to him by myself. And the words are these. And now I shall hand you over to Ian. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ian Boyter and I'm going to read you a story. My story is called Accelerando. The bandmaster whacked a thin metal baton across the bare legs of the nearest cornet player, and with that brutal gesture he stopped the music dead. As an officer in the Salvation Army, he knew how important it was to maintain discipline in the boys seated in rows facing him. The stunned silence was broken by the delayed shriek of the cornet player as he rubbed a livid wheal on his skin. "Keep your eyes on the music, Liddle, and never mind the lassies. You missed a D flat in that last phrase." He glared at the band. "Right, from bar 17. He flourished his baton, which was actually a knitting needle, and restarted the band rehearsal. Liddle's attention had indeed been inverted by the sight of the pretty young girls in the bonneted uniforms of the Junior Salvation Army Choir, taking their seats in the raked performance area at the other end of the old wood-panelled hall. They set out their tambourines and songbooks as they prepared for their own rehearsal, which would start after the Junior Silver Band finished. In the back row of the band, John Baxter and Lindsay Graham, friends from school, sat pumping away on their shiny euphoniums. Both were newcomers to the band. Neither of them had any real idea of what they were doing. They had joined the band a few weeks earlier in the hope of getting trumpets to play, but all the cornets and trombones were taken and they had reluctantly accepted euphoniums. The bandmaster also thrust some incredibly tattered music books into their hands in the mistaken impression that they could read music. As the rehearsal continued, Baxter turned the torn pages of his music book when he saw the boy next to him turn his, hoping that no one would suspect that he was playing by ear. He played very quietly so that his improvisations would, he hoped, go unheard. As he turned the page, a large fragment of the music fell to the floor. He picked it up and inserted it back into the book, although he knew it would make no difference to his playing. In the weeks before, the two boys had put some effort into getting music out of their horns. One day, after Baxter's mother banished them from practicing in a bedroom, they took their instruments and climbed over the garden fence at the back of the house. It was only a few years after the war, and rows of houses were being built for returned soldiers and their young families in what had recently been a cornfield. It was the weekend and the builders had left the site. The boys soon found a partially built house and began to blow their horns. With no roof on the building, their efforts were heard within a half-mile radius. After about 15 minutes of this discordant cacophony, they were interrupted by an old site security man who chased them away, shouting vile threats and fierce oaths that would make paint blister. Over the weeks that followed, as they attended the weekly band rehearsals, it became apparent to the boys that their hopes of getting trumpets to play were never going to be realised. They were embarrassed by their lack of ability to read music, despite their best efforts, unlike the other boys in the band. Their stupid euphoniums were never going to be replaced by cornets. So they decided to call it a day, but how were they going to avoid the wrath of the bandmaster? Baxter came up with a plan. They would return the horns by leaving them outside on the steps of the hall before the next band practice started and before anyone else had arrived. They got on their bicycles, both of them makeshift affairs cobbled together from bits and pieces of other bikes, a wheel from one, a set of handlebars from another. Money was very tight after the war, and there was no chance of them being able to afford new bicycles. The problem Baxter had was, how was he going to carry the euphonium and grip the handlebars at the same time? Graham had found a way by slinging the instrument over his back, held by a piece of old rope, but Baxter just hung his horn over his extended thumb, gripping the handlebar with the fingers of the same hand. They set off from the suburbs towards town through light Sunday morning traffic, and although it wasn't an easy ride, they were doing all right. The hall was only about half a mile distant, along level streets. The only hill they encountered was the street that led directly to the hall, and that was where Baxter started to panic. As the bicycle sped up, the euphonium started to swing about on his thumb. Then he realised that the only brake on the bike was on the right side of the handlebar, the side on which he was carrying the horn. He couldn't operate it without dropping the euphonium. The bike sped up, and Baxter did not know what to do. The bike was really flying down the hill, and something drastic had to be done. He thrust his left foot into the spokes of the front wheel, right behind the forks. That was painful, but it worked. The bicycle, and Baxter, still carrying the euphonium, described a cartwheel in the air and crash-landed on the pavement in front of the hall. The horn hit the ground with a clang, at the same moment that he did. He lay there groaning until Graham arrived. Baxter saw that the horn was still in one piece, but the bell had been totally redesigned by the impact. They laid their horns on the steps of the hall and made their escape before being seen. Throughout his life, Baxter always gave a donation to any Salvation Army collector he encountered and thought of it as his atonement. I hope you enjoyed that.